The cantina was almost empty. Only a few traders sat in dark corners, talking in low voices about cargo runs and payment deals. The air smelled of alien spices and recycled oxygen. In the furthest corner, a Zephyrian sat alone at a metal table. His forearms rested on the surface, and his blue crystalline skin caught the dim light from overhead lamps. Commander Zixtela stared into his drink. The purple liquid glowed softly, like a small star in a glass. He had been coming to this place for months now. The same table, the same drink, the same silence. People left him alone here on Kepler 7 trading station. That was how he liked it. The war had been over for 3 years. 3 long years since. The last shot was fired. 3 years since he had seen Earth's yellow sun in the distance as the fleets pulled back. But the war lived on in his mind. It played out every night when he tried to sleep. The faces, the voices, the choices he had. Maid, a young Zephyrian female, walked into the cantina. She looked around, her large purple eyes scanning the room. When she saw Zixtela, she walked straight toward his table. Her steps were quick but nervous. She carried a small recording device in her hand. "Commander Zixtela?" she asked. Her voice was soft but clear. He looked up at her. She was young, maybe 20 years old in human terms. Her skin was lighter blue than his, and her forearms moved in the polite gestures that young Zephyrians learned in school. "I am Krena from the Galactic News Network," she said. "I would like to ask you some questions about the war with the humans." Zixtela said nothing. He picked up his glass and took a small sip. The liquid burned his throat, but it was a good burn. It helped him forget, sometimes. "Please, Commander," Kriana said. "The people need to know what really happened. The official reports don't tell the whole story." "The official reports are enough?" Zixtela said. His voice was deep and rough. "The war is over. Let it stay buried." Kriana sat down across from him without being asked. She placed her recording device on the table but did not turn it on yet. "My brother died in the war," she said quietly. "He was on the ship Stellar Wind when it was destroyed at the Titan Station battle. The reports said it was a military victory. They said we won that battle." Zixtela's 4 hands tightened around his glass. Titan Station. He remembered that battle very well. Too well. "Your brother died bravely," he said. "But why did he die?" Kriana asked. "Why did any of them die? The humans were supposed to be weak. We had better ships, better weapons, better training. The war should have been over in weeks, not years." Zixtela was quiet for a long time. Around them, the cantina's noise seemed to fade away. The other customers, the music, the sound of ships docking outside, it all became distant. "You want to know about the humans," he said finally. "Yes, you want to know why the war lasted so long." "Yes, you want to know why half our fleet came home damaged and why the other half didn't come home at all." Kriana nodded. Her purple eyes were fixed on his face. Zixtela finished his drink in one long swallow. He set the glass down and looked at the young reporter. "Turn on your recorder," he said. Kriana's hands shook a little as she activated the device. A small green light appeared, showing it was working. "We thought we knew everything about humans," Zixtela began. "Our intelligence report said they were a young species. Only a few hundred years of space travel. No real military tradition. They had never fought a war against another spacefaring race." He paused and gestured to the bartender for another drink. "We had conquered 12 star systems before we reached human space. 12 different species, 12 different worlds. Some fought us. Some surrendered without firing a shot. But they all followed the same pattern. Once they realized they could not win, they gave up. They chose to live under our rule rather than die fighting." The bartender brought another glowing drink. Zixtela nodded his thanks. "The humans were different," he continued. "We attacked their outer colonies first, small worlds with maybe 1 million people each. We expected quick surrenders. We were wrong." Kriana leaned forward. "What happened?" "They fought," Zixtela said simply. "Even when they had no chance of winning, they fought. Even when we offered them terms, they fought. Even when their ships were breaking apart around them, they kept fighting." He took another sip of his drink. "I was at Titan Station when we learned." What humans really were? It was supposed to be an easy target? A mining station with light defenses. Maybe 50 human fighters against our 300. But you won, Kriana said. The report said, we won, Zixtela interrupted. But winning and victory are not the same thing. He stared at the wall behind Kriana. On it was a painting of a peaceful nebula, all soft colors and gentle light. Nothing like the harsh reality of space combat. There was a human pilot at Titan Station, he said. His name was Jake Morrison. I learned his name later from the survivor reports. He was flying an old human fighter, the kind they used for patrol duties. Nothing special about it, nothing that should have worried our pilots. Zixtela's voice grew quieter. Morrison's ship was hit early in the battle. His life support failed. His weapons were damaged. Any reasonable pilot would have ejected or surrendered. We would have taken him prisoner. Fed him, given him medical care, kept him alive until the war ended. But he didn't surrender, Kriana said. No, he kept fighting. For 10 more minutes, he kept fighting with a ship that was falling apart around him. Our pilots couldn't understand it. Why would someone choose to die when they could live? Zixtela closed his eyes for a moment. Then our sensors detected a human civilian transport trying to escape the station. Families, children, people who had nothing to do with the war. My squadron leader ordered us to destroy it. Standard procedure. No witnesses, no survivors to carry tales of our strength. What did Morrison do? He'd put his dying ship between us. And the transport. One small fighter against an entire squadron. He fired everything he had left. His shots barely scratched our armor, but he kept shooting, and then Zixtela opened his eyes and looked directly at Kriana. Then he aimed his ship at our flagship and flew straight at it. Full speed, no hesitation. He crashed into our main weapons array and destroyed it. The explosion killed him instantly. But it also disabled our most powerful ship. The transport escaped. Kriana was very quiet. The recording device's green light continued to blink. One human pilot, flying a broken ship, dying from lack of air, saved 800 civilians that day, Zixtela said. He could have lived. He chose to die instead. And that was when I first understood what we were really fighting. What do you mean? Zixtela picked up his glass but did not drink from it. We were not fighting an army or a government or a star system. We were fighting an idea. The idea that some things are worth dying for. The idea that freedom matters more than life itself. You cannot conquer an idea with ships and weapons. You can only kill the people who believe in it. And when you kill them, the idea grows stronger. The cantina was completely quiet now. Even the background music had stopped. That was just the first battle, Zixtela said. There were many more. Each one taught us something new about humans. Each one cost us more than we expected to pay. And each one showed us that we had started a war we did not understand. He looked at Kriana's young face and saw something there that reminded him of his own younger self before the war. Before he learned what humans were capable of. Do you still want to hear the rest? He asked. Kriana nodded without speaking. Then order yourself a drink, Zixtela said. This story will take a while to tell. Kriana ordered a blue drink that sparkled like tiny stars. She held it with 2 hands while her other 2 hands kept the recording device steady. The cantina had grown even quieter. It seemed like the other customers could sense that something important was happening at their table. Zixtela stared into his glass for a long moment before continuing. After Titan Station, our commanders thought the humans would learn their lesson. They thought the loss of Morrison and his heroic death would make other humans more careful, more willing to surrender when they faced impossible odds. He made a sound that might have been laughter, but there was no joy in it. They were wrong again. The humans did learn from Morrison's death, but not the lesson we expected. They learned that one person could make a difference. They learned that sacrifice had power. Kriana took a small sip of her drink. What happened next? New Denver, Zixtela said. The name came out like a curse word. A human colony world with 12 million people. It had factories, farms, schools, hospitals, everything a peaceful world needs. Our fleet surrounded the planet and demanded surrender. He paused and gestured for another drink from the bartender. The planet's military commander was a human female named Colonel Lisa Hayes. Our intelligence said she had fought in some small conflicts before, but nothing like a full invasion. We expected her to see reason. We offered good terms. The civilians would be relocated to other worlds. The military would be treated as prisoners of war. No one had to die, but she refused, Kriana said. She sent back a message. Just 3 words in our language. Come and take. Zixtela S4 hands clenched into fists on the table. So we came. We landed 200,000 troops on New Denver. We had battle mechs, hover tanks, air support. The humans had maybe 50,000 soldiers and some old defensive weapons. It should have been over in days. The bartender brought his new drink. Zixtela drank half of it in one gulp. The siege lasted 3 months. 3 months of the most brutal fighting I have ever seen. Hayes turned every building into a fortress. Every street became a battlefield. Every corner hit a human with a weapon. Kriana was writing notes on a small pad with one hand while keeping the recorder going with another. Tell me about the battles, she said. There were no battles, Zixtela said. There was just fighting, endless fighting. We would take a city. Block during the day, and the humans would take it back at night. We would destroy their weapons, and they would build new ones from scrap metal. We would cut their supply lines, and they would grow food in basements and rooftops. He stared at the wall again, but Kriana could tell he was not seeing the cantina anymore. He was seeing something else, something far away and long ago. The humans had a pilot named Captain Ryan Bell. He led their remaining air force. Maybe 20 old fighters against our 300? Every day, Bell would lead attacks against our supply ships. Every day, we would shoot down half his pilots. Every day, new humans would volunteer to take their place. Zixtela's voice grew softer. Bell himself was shot down 4 times. 4 times he crashed, 4 times he walked back to base, and 4 times he got into a new fighter and came after us again. On the 5th time, his ship was so damaged it could barely fly. His radio was broken, his weapons were jammed, and his fuel was leaking. What did he do? He flew his ship straight into one of our supply convoys. The explosion destroyed 15 transport ships full of ammunition and food. It also killed Bell and 2 of his wingmen who tried to follow him. Zixtela drank more of his glowing liquid. But the strangest thing was not the fighting. It was the singing. Singing? The humans would sing before their attacks. Always the same song. Our translators said it was called Amazing Grace. It was an old song about being lost and then found, about being saved from darkness. They would sing it when they knew they were going to die. Kriana stopped writing and looked up at him. I still hear that song in my dreams, Zixtela said quietly. Hundreds of human voices singing together before they charged our positions. They knew most of them would not come back, but they sang anyway. He was quiet for a long moment. There was a human doctor on New Denver. Her name was Amanda Foster. When we offered to evacuate the medical staff, she refused to leave. She said her place was with the wounded. Even though staying meant she would probably die, Foster set up a hospital in the subway tunnels under the city. She treated everyone who came to her. Human soldiers, human civilians, even wounded Zephyrian prisoners. She worked 18 hours a day, every day, for 3 months. Zixtela's voice grew even softer. Near the end of the siege, one of our bombing runs collapsed part of the tunnel system. Foster was trapped with 30 patients and no way out. Our ground troops found them 2 days later. Was she still alive? Yes, she was still working, still treating patients. She had no power, no proper medical tools, no clean water, but she was still saving lives. When our soldiers broke through the rubble, she looked up at them and asked if they needed medical attention. Kriana put down her pen. What happened to her? Our commanding officer was so impressed that he ordered our own medical team to help. Foster worked alongside Zephyrian doctors to save both human and alien wounded. She never stopped working until the last patient was stable. Zixtela finished his drink and set the glass down carefully. But the most haunting thing about New Denver was not the fighting or the singing or even the bravery. It was what we found in the ruins after the siege ended. What did you find? Messages. Carved into walls, written on pieces of metal, scratched into concrete. Thousands of messages from humans to their families. Letters they knew would never be sent. Words they needed to say even if no one would ever read them. Zixtela closed his eyes. I remember one message carved into the wall of a destroyed school. It said, "To my daughter Emma, if you are reading this, then I did not make it home. No. That every day of this fight I thought of your smile. No, that everything I did so you could grow up free. Love, Dad." The cantina was completely silent now. Even the sounds from outside seemed muted. Another message, found in a collapsed apartment building. "Mom, I know you told me to run if the fighting came to our street. But I couldn't leave Mrs. Peterson. She's too old to run, and someone has to help her. If something happens to me, know that I was helping someone who needed help. That's what you taught me. Love, your son Jake." Kriana had tears in her purple eyes. "We found thousands of these messages," Zixtela continued. Parents writing to children, children writing to parents, husbands and wives saying goodbye to each other, but they were not messages of despair. They were messages of love. Messages of hope. Messages that said, "We fight not because we hate our enemies, but because we love our families." He opened his eyes and looked at Kriana. That was when I began to understand that we were not just fighting human soldiers. We were fighting human hearts. We were fighting human love. And love, I learned, is much stronger than hate. Did you win the siege? We took the planet, Zixtela said, but we did not win. Half our invasion force was killed or wounded. Our supply lines were destroyed. Our morale was broken. And worst of all, word of New Denver spread to every human world. Instead of frightening them into surrender, the siege made them more determined to fight. He gestured to the bartender for another drink. New Denver taught me that humans do not fight the way other species fight. Other species fight to win. Humans fight for something bigger than victory. They fight for the right to choose their own future. And that makes them the most dangerous enemy in the galaxy. Kriana turned off the recorder for a moment. "Commander, may I ask you something personal?" "Yes. Do you regret fighting in that war?" Zixtela was quiet for a very long time. "I regret that it had to happen," he said finally. "But I do not regret. Learning what humans are capable of. That knowledge changed me. It changed all of us who survived." He looked at her young face. "Are you ready to hear about the forest moon of Verdania? That is where I learned that sometimes the enemy can save your life." Kriana turned the recorder back on. Her drink sat forgotten on the table, the sparkling stars inside it slowly fading. The cantina around them felt like a different world from the war stories Zixtela was telling. Verdania was different from New Denver, Zixtela began. It was not a city world or a colony. It was a forest moon almost completely covered in trees. The humans used it as a research station and wildlife preserve. Only about 5,000 people lived there. He held his new drink, but did not taste it yet. Our commanders thought it would be easy to take. Just a small garrison, maybe 100 human soldiers. No heavy weapons, no fortifications. We were supposed to secure the research facilities and capture the scientists for questioning. But it was not easy, Kriana said. No, it was not easy. At all. The moment we landed, we knew something was wrong. Our troops would disappear. Supply convoys would be attacked and destroyed. Communication towers would be sabotaged. But we never saw who was doing it. Zixtela took a small sip of his drink. At first, we thought it was the garrison soldiers using guerrilla tactics. Hit-and-run attacks, ambush, sabotage. Nothing we had not dealt with before on other worlds. But then our intelligence officers analyzed the attack patterns. What did they find? All the attacks were being carried out by one person. One human working alone, covering hundreds of square kilometers of forest. Our computer said it was impossible. No single soldier could move that fast, strike that many targets, and stay hidden for so long. Kriana leaned forward, her purple eyes wide with interest. But someone was doing the impossible, Zixtela continued. His name was Sergeant William Carter. We learned this from captured garrison records. He had been a park ranger before the war, someone who protected the forest and its animals. He knew every tree, every trail, every hiding place on that moon. What was he like? Carter was not a career soldier. He was a quiet man who loved nature and wildlife. His file said he had never wanted to fight anyone. But when we invaded his world, he chose to fight for it. Zixtela stared into his glass as if he could see the forest moon reflected there. For 2 months, Carter waged a one-man war against our entire division. He would attack our supply trucks with homemade explosives. He would disable our vehicles and then disappear into the forest like a ghost. Our soldiers began to call him the Forest Phantom. How did he avoid capture for so long? Carter knew things about survival that our training never taught us. He could move through the forest without making a sound. He could build shelters that our senses could not detect. He could live off the land, eating plants and hunting animals while our troops struggled with their limited rations. Zixtela paused and looked around the cantina. A few more customers had left, making the place even quieter. But Carter was not just hiding and attacking. He was also rescuing people. When we captured human scientists or civilian workers, Carter would track our prisoner convoys and free them. He saved over 200 humans during those 2 months. How? He knew the forest better than we knew our own ships. Carter would set traps to disable our vehicles, then help the prisoners escape into the wilderness. He taught them how to survive, how to find food and shelter, how to stay hidden until rescue ships could find them. Kriana made more notes on her pad. Did he ever kill any of your soldiers? Zixtela was quiet for a long moment. That is the strangest part of the story. Carter could have killed hundreds of us. He had opportunities, weapons, knowledge of our movements. But he chose not to. When he attacked our convoys, he would use stun weapons or explosives that disabled our vehicles without killing the crews. When he rescued prisoners, he would lock our guards in storage containers instead of shooting them. Why would he show mercy to invaders? I asked myself that question many times. The answer came when I met him face to face. Kriana stopped writing. You met him? Yes, and he saved my life. Zixtela took a longer drink this time. The purple liquid seemed to glow brighter as he consumed it. It happened during our 3rd month on Verdania. I was leading a patrol to investigate reports of Carter's activities in the northern forest. Our intelligence said he had a camp somewhere. In that area, what went wrong? Everything. Our navigation systems failed in a magnetic storm. Our aircraft crashed in heavy trees. I was the only survivor, and I was badly injured. My left arm was broken, my communication equipment was destroyed, and I was bleeding from a head wound. Zixtela touched his forehead where a faint scar was still visible on his blue skin. I tried to walk back to our base, but I got lost in the forest. For 2 days, I wandered in circles, growing weaker from my injuries and lack of food. On the 3rd day, I collapsed near a small stream. That is when Carter found you. I woke up in a cave. My wounds had been cleaned and bandaged. My broken arm was in a splint made from tree branches and cloth. There was a small fire for warmth and a container of fresh water nearby. Zixtela's voice grew softer. Carter was sitting across the cave from me, cleaning a rifle. He was smaller than I expected. Maybe average height for a human with brown hair and green eyes. He wore old forest ranger clothes that were patched and mended. He looked tired, like someone who had not slept well in months. What did he say to you? At first, nothing. He just watched me wake up and check my bandages. Then he pointed to some food he had prepared. Cooked fish from the stream and some edible plants. He gestured for me to eat. Were you afraid? Terrified. I was an enemy soldier, helpless and alone, with a human who had been fighting my people for months. I expected him to interrogate me or kill me or take me prisoner. But he did not. No, he fed me. He gave me medicine for pain. He changed my bandages twice a day and made sure my broken arm was healing properly. For 5 days, he took care of me like I was his friend instead of his enemy. Kriana's eyes were wide with amazement. Did you talk to each other? Carter spoke. Some basic Zephyrian, enough for simple conversations. On the 2nd day, I asked him why he was helping me. Do you know what he said? What? He said, because you are hurt and I know how to help. That was all. No speeches about morality or politics, just a simple fact. I was injured and he could treat injuries. Zixtela paused to let that sink in. On the fourth day, I asked him why he had not killed any of my soldiers during his attacks. He thought for a long time before answering. Then he said, "My job was to protect this forest and everything in it." "That includes you now. What did you say to that?" I told him I was his enemy. I told him my people had invaded his world and killed his friends. I asked him how he could protect someone who was trying to destroy everything he loved. Zixtela's four hands gripped his glass tightly. Carter looked at me with those green eyes and said, "War makes us do terrible things, but we still choose who we become. I choose to be someone who helps the wounded, even if they are enemies." The cantina was completely silent except for the soft hum of the air recycling system. On the fifth day, Carter told me I was well enough to travel. He gave me a map showing how to reach my base, food for the journey, and clean bandages for my arm. Before I left, he handed me a note written in our language. What did the note say? War is hell. We are still people. I kept that note for the rest of the war. I still have it. Zixtela reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, worn piece of paper. He placed it on the table where Kriana could see it. The writing was in Zephyrian script, but the words were simple and clear. Did you ever see Carter again? Yes. 2 weeks later, Carter was finally cornered by a full battalion of our troops. They surrounded his camp and demanded his surrender. Did he surrender? No, but he did not fight either. Carter sent a message on an open radio frequency that both our fleets and the human ships could hear. He said he wanted to tell his wife Kate that he had kept his promise to protect the forest and its people. He said he wanted everyone to know that even in war, people could choose to be kind instead of cruel. Zixtela's voice broke slightly. Then Carter walked out of his camp with his hands empty and no weapons. Our soldiers shot him down before he could say another word. Kriana had tears running down her face. Carter died believing that people could choose to be good, even when everything around them was evil. He died believing that kindness was stronger than hatred, and he proved it by saving the life of an enemy who should have been his killer. Zixtela finished his drink and set the glass down gently. Carter haunts me not because he was a great warrior or a brilliant tactician. He haunts me because he was a good man who chose to stay good, even when the universe gave him every reason to become something else. He looked at Kriana's tear-stained face. Are you ready to hear about the children? That is the hardest part of this story to tell. Kriana wiped the tears from her purple eyes with a small cloth. She took a deep breath and nodded to Zixtela. The recorder continued its quiet humming, capturing every word of the old commander's memories. The children, Zixtela said slowly. That is the part of the war that still wakes me up at night. When I close my eyes, I see their faces. Young humans who should have been playing games and learning in schools, but instead were fighting a war that adults had started, he ordered. Another drink, his fourth of the evening. The bartender brought it without a word. It started on the colony world of New Athens. We had been fighting there for 6 months. The human military was almost defeated, their defenses crumbling. Our commanders thought the planet would surrender within days. But something changed, Kriana said. The children changed everything. We began to notice that our intelligence was always wrong. We would plan an attack on a human position, only to find it abandoned when we arrived. We would move supplies through what we thought were secure routes, only to have them attacked by human forces who knew exactly where to find us. Zixtela stared at his new drink without touching it. At first, we thought there was a spy among our own troops, someone feeding information to the humans. We investigated for weeks, checking communication logs, watching our own soldiers. But we found nothing. How were the humans getting their information? Children. Human children as young as 10 years old were watching our movements and reporting back to the resistance. They would hide in ruins, climb trees near our camps, even sneak into our supply areas. They were so small, so quiet, that our sensors and guards never noticed them. Kriana stopped writing and looked up at him. 10 years old? Some were even younger. The resistance leaders tried to keep the smallest children away from dangerous work, but many refused to stay hidden. They wanted to help protect their families and their homes. Zixtela finally took a sip of his drink. The leader of the Child Intelligence Network was a girl named Emma Watson. She was 14 years old with red hair and blue eyes. Emma organized the other children, taught them how to move without being seen, and created a communication system using old radio equipment. How did you learn about her? We captured one of her radio messages by accident. Emma was talking to the human military commander, giving detailed reports about our troop positions and supply schedules. The information was so accurate that our officers thought it came from a trained spy, but it was just a child. Just a child who was smarter and braver than most of our veteran soldiers. Emma had turned dozens of young humans into an intelligence network that was more effective than anything we had seen from adult resistance groups. Zixtela paused and looked around the cantina. A new customer had entered, but the alien took one look at their table and chose to sit far away. The weight of the conversation seemed to fill the air around them. There was also Alex Turner, a 12-year-old boy who helped coordinate civilian evacuations. When we would attack a city district, Alex would somehow get word to the families, living there hours before our assault began. Hundreds of civilians escaped because of his warnings. How could a 12-year-old do such things? Alex knew every tunnel, every sewer pipe, every hidden passage in the city. He had grown up playing in those places, exploring them like a game. When the war came, he used that knowledge to move people to safety. Zixtela's voice grew softer. And there was Sophie Miller, just 13 years old. She became a symbol for the human resistance after she was captured during one of our raids. What happened to her? Sophie was caught while delivering medicine to wounded human soldiers hiding in the city's underground. Our troops brought her to the detention center for questioning. She was so young, so small, that our interrogators did not know what to do with her. Kriana leaned forward. Did they hurt her? No, even our hardest soldiers could not bring themselves to harm a child. But they kept her in a cell, hoping she would give them information about the resistance. Did she? Sophie refused to say. Anything that might help us. For 3 days, she sat in that cell and said nothing except to ask for water and food. She was polite to her guards, even thanked them when they brought her meals, but she would not betray her friends. Zixtela took another drink. On the 4th day, Sophie asked to speak to the commanding officer. She was brought to General Korthak, our highest-ranking officer on the planet. Do you know what she said to him? What? She asked if she could write a letter to her parents. She said she knew they must be worried about her and she wanted them to know she was safe. She promised that if he let her send the letter, she would answer one question about the resistance. Did the general agree? Korthak was curious. He gave her paper and a pen, thinking he might learn something useful from her letter. Sophie wrote for 20 minutes, then handed the letter to him. Zixtela closed his eyes, remembering. The letter said, "Dear Mom and Dad, I'm okay. The alien soldiers are not hurting me. They gave me food and a clean place to sleep. I know you taught me to be brave and to help people who need help. I'm trying to be brave now. I'm trying to help. Please do not worry about me. Please take care of yourselves and stay safe. I love you both very much. Your daughter, Sophie." Kriana had tears in her eyes again. After reading the letter, General Korthak asked Sophie his question. He wanted to know where the resistance kept their medical supplies. Sophie looked at him with those young blue eyes and said, "General, I promise to answer one question. Here is my answer. I do not know where the medical supplies are kept. Because the resistance moves them every day to keep them safe from people like you." She told the truth but gave no useful information. Exactly. Sophie had kept her promise, but revealed nothing that could harm her friends. Korthak was so impressed by her intelligence and courage that he ordered her release the next day. Zixtela opened his eyes and looked at Kriana. But the most haunting encounter I had with human children happened during the evacuation of New Athens. Our final assault was about to begin, and most of the human civilians were fleeing the city through underground tunnels. What happened? I was leading a patrol to secure one of the tunnel entrances when I found Emma Watson helping younger children escape. She was carrying a little girl who could not walk fast enough to keep up with the group. Did you capture her? I could have. Emma saw me coming and could have run, but she would not abandon the little girl. She stood there in the tunnel entrance, holding the child, and looked directly at me. Zixtela's voice became very quiet. Emma said, "Please do not hurt them. They are scared." She was not asking for herself. She was asking for the other children. Even with an enemy soldier pointing a weapon at her, her first thought was protecting others. "What did you do?" I lowered my weapon. I looked at this 14-year-old girl who was braver than most adults I knew, and I could not bring myself to stop her. Emma nodded her thanks, picked up the little girl, and disappeared into the tunnels with the other children. "You let them escape." I told my superiors that the tunnel was empty when we arrived. It was the first lie I ever told during the war, but it was not the last. Zixtela finished his drink in one swallow. That night I realized something that changed everything for me. We were not just fighting human soldiers or human governments. We were fighting human children who were braver and more determined than our veteran warriors. He set his glass down carefully. How do you defeat an enemy whose children are willing to risk their lives for freedom? How do you conquer a species that teaches its young to choose courage over safety? What did that mean? For the war? It meant that even if we killed every human soldier, even if we destroyed every human city, we would still lose. Because the children would grow up remembering what we had done. They would grow up knowing that freedom was worth fighting for, and they would teach their children the same lesson. Zixtela looked directly at Kriana. We were not fighting for territory or resources or power. We were fighting against an idea that lived in the hearts of human children. And that was a war we could never win. He gestured to the bartender for another drink. Are you ready to hear about the final battle? About how the war ended not with victory but with understanding? The cantina was nearly empty now. Only Zixtela and Kriana remained at their table, surrounded by empty glasses and the weight of the stories that had been shared. The bartender had dimmed the lights, giving the place a soft, peaceful glow. That seemed at odds with the war memories filling the air. Kriana checked her recording device. It had been running for hours, capturing every word of the commander's haunting tales. She looked at Zixtela and saw that his 4 hands were shaking slightly as he reached for his latest drink. The final battle, he said without waiting for her to ask. Earth's moon. The place where everything ended, but not the way anyone expected. He took a small sip and stared at the liquid as if it held the answers to questions he had been asking himself for 3 years. By the time we reached Earth's solar system, the war had been going on for almost 4 years. Both sides were exhausted. We had lost more ships and soldiers than in all our previous conquests combined. The humans had lost most of their colonies, and millions of their people. But they still would not surrender, Kriana said. Never. If anything, they fought harder as we got closer to their homeworld. Earth was their last stand, their final line of defense. They gathered every ship they had left, every pilot who could still fly, every weapon that could still fire. Zixtela paused and looked at the young reporter. The human fleet was commanded by Admiral Patricia Stone. She was an older woman, maybe 60 years old in human terms. She had gray hair and tired eyes, but when she spoke to her fleet, her voice was strong and clear. What was she like? Stone was not like the other human commanders we had faced. She did not make speeches about glory or victory. She did not promise her people that they would win. Instead, she told them the truth. What truth? That they were probably going to die. That the Zephyrian fleet was larger and stronger than anything they could put together. That Earth might fall no matter how bravely they fought. Kriana stopped taking notes and just listened. But then Stone said something that I will never forget. She told her fleet that winning and fighting for something worthwhile were not the same thing. She said that even if they lost, their children would know that their parents had stood up for what was right. Zixtela drank more of his glowing liquid. The battle began at dawn, Earth time. Our fleet had 800 ships. The humans had maybe 200. It should have been a massacre. But it was not. The humans fought like nothing we had ever seen before. Every ship, every pilot, every crew member gave everything they had. They used tactics we did not expect, took risks that seemed insane, and never stopped fighting even when their ships were falling apart around them. He was quiet for a moment, lost in memory. There was a young human pilot named Lieutenant Sarah. Kim. She was maybe 25 years old, leading a squadron of fighters against our capital ships. Her radio was damaged, so she could not talk to her wingmen, but she kept flying formation with them anyway. What happened to her? Kim's fighter was hit by our defensive weapons. Her ship lost power and began to drift toward Earth's atmosphere. Any reasonable pilot would have ejected and hoped for rescue. But Kim managed to restart her engines and flew back into the battle. Even though she was wounded, her ship was leaking air and her left arm was broken from the impact. But Kim kept fighting for another hour, shooting down 3 of our fighters before her ship finally gave out completely. Zixtela's voice grew softer. But the strangest thing about the final battle was not the fighting, it was the messages. Messages? Halfway through the battle, human ships began broadcasting personal messages on open frequencies, not military communications or tactical updates. Personal messages from individual crew members to individual Zephyrian pilots. Kriana leaned forward. Confused, what kind of messages? Stories about their lives. Messages about their families, their hopes, their dreams. One human pilot named Chris Davis sent a message directly to me. He said, "Commander Zixtela, I have a daughter named Lucy. She is 3 years old. She likes to draw pictures of flowers and ask questions about the stars. I fight today so she can grow up free to draw whatever she wants and ask any question that comes to her mind. What do you fight for?" The cantina was completely silent except for the soft hum of the air recycler. More messages came. A human engineer named Tom Rodriguez talked about his wife and how they had planned to open a small restaurant after the war. A gunner named Maria Santos described her elderly mother who lived on a farm and grew vegetables for the local market. Why were they telling you these things? I think they wanted us to know that they were not just soldiers or enemies. They were people with families and dreams and hopes for the future. They wanted us to understand what we were really fighting against. Zixtela finished his drink and set the glass down carefully. The message that changed everything came from Commander Nathan Price. His ship was badly damaged and about to be destroyed by one of our dreadnoughts. Instead of trying to escape, Price aimed his ship at our largest mothership. He was going to ram it? Yes, but before he did, Price sent a message to our entire fleet. He said, "To all Zephyrian forces, my name is Nathan Price. I am 32 years old. I have a wife named Helen and a son named Bobby who just learned to ride a bicycle. I'm about to die not because I hate you, but because I love them. I hope someday your children and my children can play together in a universe where no one has to die for freedom." Kriana had tears streaming down her face. Then Price crashed his ship into our mothership and destroyed it. The explosion was so bright, it could be seen from Earth's surface. What happened after that? Something broke inside our fleet. Not our ships or our weapons, but something deeper. Our pilots began to hesitate before firing. Our commanders started questioning their orders. The human messages had shown us that we were not fighting monsters or enemies, but parents and children and people who loved each other. Zixtela gestured for one more drink, but when it came, he did not touch it. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, both fleets were badly damaged. We had lost half our ships, and the humans had lost most of theirs, but neither side had won. How did the war end? Admiral Stone sent a final message to our fleet. "Commander." She said that both sides had proven their courage and their determination. She said that continuing the fight would only lead to more death on both sides, and that perhaps it was time to find a different way to resolve their differences. Did your commander agree? General Vorthek was an old soldier who had fought in many wars, but he had also been listening to the human messages during the battle. When Stone offered to negotiate a ceasefire, he accepted. And just like that, not just like that. The negotiations took months. But both sides were exhausted, and both sides had learned something important during the war. What had they learned? We learned that humans were not weak or primitive like other species we had conquered. They were something new in the galaxy. A species that chose to fight for ideas instead of just territory. A species that would rather die than live without freedom. Zixtela looked directly at Kriana. And the humans learned that not all Zephyrians were evil conquerors. Some of us were just soldiers following orders, and some of us could change when we saw the truth. What happened after the ceasefire? The war officially ended 6 months later with the Treaty of Kepler Station. Both sides agreed to withdraw to their original territories. Prisoners were exchanged, reparations were paid for damages, but that was not the real end, was it? No, the real end came when former enemies began working together. Human and Zephyrian. Doctors collaborated to treat war veterans. Engineers from both species worked to rebuild damaged worlds. Teachers shared knowledge and culture. Zixtela finally picked up his last drink and took a small sip. I now work with a human organization that tries to prevent future wars. My partner is a former human pilot named Karen Brooks. She was at the final battle, flying in Sarah Kim's squadron. What is it like working with former enemies? At first, it was difficult. We both had memories of friends who died in the war. We both had reasons to hate each other. But we also both remembered the human messages during the final battle. We remembered that we were fighting people, not monsters. Do you still have nightmares about the war? Yes, but they are different now. Instead of dreaming about explosions and death, I dream about the faces of the humans I met. Jake Morrison crashing his ship to save civilians. William Carter bandaging my wounds in that cave. Emma Watson asking me not to hurt the children. Zixtela stood up slowly, his forearms moving in a gesture of respect. I tell these stories not to glorify war or to make heroes out of soldiers. I tell them because they show that even in the darkest times, people can choose to be kind instead of cruel. They can choose to see enemies as fellow beings instead of targets. He placed some credits on the table to pay for their drinks. The humans taught me that the strongest weapon in the universe is not a ship or a gun or a bomb. It is the choice to remain human, even when everything around you is inhuman. Kriana turned off her recording device and stood up as well. Thank you for sharing these stories, Commander. They will help people understand what really happened during the war.